There are moments in a nurse's life when time seems to stand still, when every second can mean the difference between life and death, and when everything you've learned, all your experience, all your intuition, collides head-on with a doctor's order. That's exactly what happened to me one night on shift that would change my life forever. The doctor yelled at me in front of the entire team, his voice echoing through the emergency room. "You can't touch that, nurse." But the patient was dying before my eyes, and I had seconds to decide: obey and possibly watch that life fade away, or disobey and risk everything I've built over years of my career. What would you do? This is my story, and it will make you question everything you think you know about medical hierarchy, professional instinct, and the true meaning of saving lives. Stay until the end, because the outcome of this story is something no one expected, not even me. And my name is Olivia Richardson, and I've been a nurse for 12 years. I was born in a small town in Portland, Oregon, where mornings are shrouded in thick fog and the smell of fresh coffee wafts from local roasters on every corner. I grew up in a simple family. My mother was a teacher and my father worked in a wood shop. Medicine was never part of our family history until the day my younger brother had a bicycle accident at age 8. The nurse who cared for him in the hospital was so compassionate, so dedicated, that she planted the seed in me of what I wanted to be. I studied nursing at State University, working part-time at a coffee shop to pay the bills. Those were difficult years, sleepless nights studying anatomy and pharmacology, and exhausting internships where I questioned whether I could really do it. But I graduated, and I landed my first job at St. Mary Hospital, a mid-sized hospital in downtown Portland. I married David, a civil engineer I met on a dating app, at 28. He never fully understood the challenges of my profession, the night shifts, the emotional stress of losing patients, but he always supported me. 3 years ago, I accepted a job at Seattle Metropolitan Hospital, one of the largest trauma centers in the region. We moved to Seattle, Washington, a vibrant city with towering skyscrapers and a public market that bustles with life on weekends. It was there, in the emergency room of that chaotic hospital, that everything happened. It was a Tuesday in November, around 11 p.m. The night shift in the ER was always the most unpredictable, but that night was particularly hectic. 3 victims of a car accident had arrived minutes earlier, and the team was split between the trauma rooms. I was finishing medicating a patient with an asthma attack when I heard the paramedics shouting codes down the hallway. Trauma 1, male, 52, cardiac arrest en route, revived 5 minutes ago. I rushed to the trauma room. The patient was unconscious, his skin pale as paper, a cold sweat dripping down his forehead. The paramedics continued CPR as they transferred him to our stretcher. Dr. Harrison was on call that night, a cardiovascular surgeon with 25 years of experience and a reputation for brilliance, but also extremely arrogant and territorial. He stormed into the room barking orders. Prepare for intubation. Adrenaline, 1 milligram. Now. The team moved like a well-oiled machine. I was monitoring vital signs when I noticed something strange on the heart monitor. The tracing wasn't typical of a common cardiac arrest. There was an irregular pattern I'd seen only once before, during a rare case of cardiac tamponade. "Dr. Harrison," I observed, pointing to the monitor, "this pattern here wouldn't be indicative of—" He cut me off before I could finish. "Nurse Richardson, I can read a monitor. Continue with your duties." I felt my stomach tighten. Something was wrong. What do you think so far? Have you ever experienced a situation where your intuition told you one thing, but your authority told you another? Let us know in the comments. The next few minutes were silent torture. Dr. Harrison ordered medications, adjusted the ventilator, but the patient was unresponsive. The numbers on the monitor kept dropping, blood pressure plummeting, oxygen saturation critical. I stared at the monitor and then at the patient's chest. My mind raced. Cardiac tamponade, when fluid accumulates in the pericardial sac around the heart, compressing the organ and preventing it from pumping properly. The only solution is pericardiocentesis, a procedure in which we insert a needle to drain the fluid, but it's risky, invasive, and should only be performed if the diagnosis is certain. "Dr. Harrison," I insisted, keeping my voice steady. "The clinical signs indicate tamponade, distended jugular veins, muffled heart, sounds, blood pressure dropping despite medications. We should consider pericardiocentesis." He turned to me, and his eyes held a fury I'd never seen before. "Nurse Richardson, are you questioning my diagnosis? I'm the doctor here. This is a standard cardiac emergency. I'm not going to perform an invasive procedure based on your intuition. Now get more adrenaline pumping and stop interfering." The silence in the room was deafening. The other nurses and the medical resident avoided looking at me. I felt my face burn with humiliation, but also with frustration. I looked back at the patient. He was dying, and I knew why. But publicly defying a senior physician, disobeying a direct order, could cost me my license, my job, my entire career. David and I had a mortgage, bills, dreams of having children. children. Everything was at stake in that moment. Thank you for sticking with me this far. Trust me, the best of this story is yet to come, and you won't want to miss what happens next. 30 seconds. That's all it took for my entire life to flash before my eyes. I saw myself returning to Portland, defeated, explaining to my family why I'd been fired. I saw David looking at me with disappointment. I saw years of study and sacrifice go down the drain, but I also saw my mother's face when she told me she was proud of me for choosing to be a nurse. I saw my brother in that hospital bed, years ago, depending on someone who cared enough to do the right thing. I saw every patient I'd cared for, every life I'd touched, and then I looked at that man in front of me. He had a wedding ring. He probably had children, a family waiting for news, a lifetime of memories and possible futures. He was more than numbers on a monitor. He was someone, and he was dying because a doctor's ego trumped the clinical evidence before us. My hand shook as I grabbed the pericardiocentesis kit from the emergency tray. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Dr. Harrison had his back turned, adjusting the defibrillator, preparing for another shock. It was now or never. I began preparing the field for the procedure, cleaning the patient's chest area. The resident looked at me wide-eyed. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "Saving his life," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. That's when Dr. Harrison turned. What happened next was like an explosion. "Richardson," he roared, "you can't touch that nurse. Get away from that patient now, or I'll make sure you never work in a hospital again." But I had already gone too far to stop. With surprisingly steady hands, I located the insertion point just below the xiphoid process at a 45-degree angle toward the left shoulder. Dr. Harrison advanced toward me, but the senior nurse, Janet, a 60-year-old woman I respected immensely, blocked his path. "Let her try, doctor," Janet said calmly. "If she's wrong, you can sue her later. But if she's right..." I inserted the needle slowly, applying negative pressure with the syringe, inch by inch. My entire world narrowed to that needle, that patient, that moment. I could feel dozens of eyes on me. Dr. Harrison was pale with rage, and then it happened. Dark blood began flowing into the syringe, about 150 milliliters of bloody fluid. Cardiac tamponade, exactly as I had diagnosed. The moment I drained the fluid, the monitor began to change. First, subtly, then dramatically. The blood pressure rose, the heart rate stabilized, the EKG tracing normalized. The patient took a deep, spontaneous breath. "Oh my God," the resident murmured. "It's working. He's coming back." The room exploded with controlled activity. Janet took over, helping me complete the procedure properly, while Dr. Harrison stood frozen, watching in silence. I removed the needle, applied pressure, and watched as the vital signs continued to improve. The patient wasn't out of danger yet, but he was alive, and he was responding. I had saved his life, but at what cost? When I turned, Dr. Harrison was staring at me with an expression that mixed shock, anger, and something else. Shame, perhaps. "Get out of my office," were the first words he said, his voice dangerously low. "Now." Janet tried to intervene, but he held up his hand. "No, Janet." She disobeyed a direct medical order. She performed an invasive procedure without authorization. "I don't care about the outcome. There are protocols, there is hierarchy, there are reasons why nurses don't make medical decisions." I felt tears burn my eyes, but I refused to let them fall there. I left the trauma room with my head held high, but my legs were shaking so badly I could barely walk. I went straight to the locker room and locked the door. Then, finally, I broke down. I cried from the tension, from the fear, from the magnitude of what I had just done. My phone rang. It was the nursing supervisor, Karen. "Olivia, I need you to come to my office immediately." I knew what was coming. I climbed the stairs to the administrative department, as if I were going to my own execution. Karen's office was small and windowless, with stacked files and the smell of stale coffee. She sat behind the desk, her expression unreadable. "Sit down, Olivia. Dr. Harrison has already contacted me. He's demanding your immediate suspension and a formal investigation. He claims you endangered a patient's life with your insubordination." My voice sounded weaker than I intended. "I saved his life, Karen. The patient had cardiac tamponade. If I hadn't acted, he would have died." She sighed deeply. "I believe you, Olivia, but that doesn't change the fact that you violated the chain of command. There are procedures for these cases. You should have requested a second opinion, called another doctor." "But there was no time," I protested. "The patient was dying. Every second counted. If I had wasted time finding another doctor, he would be dead now." Karen shook her head slowly. "I understand your position, but now I have a senior physician questioning the competence and discipline of my nursing staff, and a patient who survived due to an unauthorized procedure. This will be subject to formal investigation. You are suspended with pay until the Ethics and Quality Committee determines what happened and whether your actions were justified. Hand over your badge." I drove home in shock. It was 3 in the morning when I quietly entered the apartment. David was asleep on the couch, the television still on. I sat next to him and began to cry again. He woke with a start, "Liv, what happened? Are you okay?" I told him everything, every detail. When I finished, he hugged me tightly. "You did the right thing," he said firmly. "No matter what happens, you saved a life. That's what matters." But did it matter? The next few days were torturous. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything but wait. News spread through the hospital. Some colleagues sent me messages of support. Others avoided me as if I had a contagious disease. Janet called to tell me that the patient, whose name I learned was Robert Mitchell, was stable and being prepared for definitive heart surgery. "He'll survive," she said, "thanks to you." The investigation was scheduled for the following week. I would have to testify, explain my actions, defend my decision, before a panel of doctors and administrators. By the way, where are you watching from now? Tell us your city or country in the comments. I'd love to hear where this story is headed. The fifth-floor conference room was intimidating, with a long mahogany table and leather chairs. The panel consisted of 5 people: the medical director, 2 senior physicians, the director of nursing, and a hospital legal representative. Dr. Harrison sat on the other side, his posture rigid. I began my testimony nervously, explaining step by step what I observed, what I thought, and why I acted. I presented clinical evidence, cited studies on cardiac tamponade, and explained the medical reasoning behind my decision. Then Dr. Harrison gave his version. He claimed I had acted rashly, that there was no conclusive evidence of tamponade at the time, and that I had put the patient at unnecessary risk with an invasive procedure. But then something unexpected happened. The door opened, and Robert Mitchell entered, pushed in a wheelchair by his wife. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, his voice still weak but determined. "But I needed to be here. I needed to see the woman who saved my life." The panel seemed surprised but allowed him to speak. Robert said he was conscious intermittently during resuscitation. He heard the argument between Dr. Harrison and me. He heard the doctor order me to stop, and he heard me decide to continue anyway. "That nurse gave me a second chance with my family," he said, tears streaming down his face. "My daughter is getting married next month. I'll be there to walk her down the aisle because of her courage." After Robert left, there was a long silence. Then the medical director asked for the full medical records. What they discovered changed everything. In Dr. Harrison's medical records from the past 6 months, there were 3 malpractice cases quietly being investigated by the hospital. In 2 cases, he had ignored nurses' suggestions that, in retrospect, were correct. One patient had suffered serious complications due to his poor judgment. The hospital was keeping this secret while they negotiated settlements. More importantly, a technical review of Robert Mitchell's case conclusively confirmed that it was cardiac tamponade, and that the pericardiocentesis I performed was performed perfectly and at the correct critical moment. Any further delay would have resulted in death. The panel's recommendation came a week later. My actions were deemed clinically appropriate and justified by the circumstances. I was officially commended for my clinical competence and courage, but I was also formally warned about the importance of following protocols and seeking second opinions when possible. As for Dr. Harrison, he was placed on administrative review and required to undergo additional training in teamwork and interprofessional communication. His arrogance finally paid off. I returned to work 3 weeks later. Things were different. Some doctors respected me more, seeing me as a competent professional and not just a nurse following orders. Others saw me as problematic, someone who challenged authority. Dr. Harrison requested a transfer to another hospital 2 months later. We never spoke about that night again, but my personal life suffered. David and I fought more. He didn't understand why I was still affected, why I woke up in the middle of the night reliving that moment, why I questioned every decision I made at work now. Where today, 2 years later, I work at the same hospital, in the same emergency room. Robert Mitchell has fully recovered and visits occasionally to thank the staff. His daughter got married, and he sent me photos of the ceremony with a moving letter. I keep it in my drawer and read it on difficult days. David and I separated 6 months ago, not because of that night, specifically, but because of everything that came after. The changes in me, the intensity with which I began to pursue my profession, the way that experience transformed me. He wanted the Olivia of old, and I could no longer be that person. I learned that saving a life has a cost that goes beyond the moment. It changes you fundamentally. You carry the weight of knowing that a split-second decision can mean everything. I also understood something crucial about medicine. It's not just science. It's art. It's intuition. It's experience. And it's the humility to recognize that sometimes the person lower in the ranks in the room may be seeing something you missed. Nurses aren't just executors of orders. We are the eyes, the ears, the front line of patient care. We spend more time with them than any doctor. And our voice matters. Would I do it all again? Absolutely, without hesitation. Because at the end of the day, when I take off my scrubs and look in the mirror, I need to be able to live with myself. And I couldn't live knowing I let a man die because I was afraid to challenge authority. This is my story. This is my truth. And if you're in a profession where lives are at stake, I hope you remember it when you face your own impossible moment. So, I ask you, if you were in my shoes, with everything at stake, your career, your license, your future, but with the certainty that you could save a life, what would you do? Would you follow orders and live with the guilt, or would you risk everything for the person in front of you? There's no easy answer. I know. Each of us has our limits, our fears, our responsibilities, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Write in the comments how you would react in this situation. Have you ever faced a similar ethical dilemma at work? How did you handle it? And if you work in healthcare or know someone who does, share this story with them. They'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening, for dedicating your time to my story. It means more than you can imagine. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real nursing stories you won't find anywhere else. And click on the next recommended video, where another nurse tells how she discovered a medical secret her hospital tried to hide for years. You won't want to miss it. Until the next story.